Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. No need for a sigh. No need for a sigh at all. That was a very enjoyable Saturday afternoon. It's kind of a scoreline that I think Spurs have threatened a fair few times under Postecoglou. They just haven't been able to be clinical enough and ruthless in their finishing to put the ball into the net. Enough times. They should have had far more results like that. Not least just 5 days ago, or 5 days before this result at the King Power Stadium. Apologies to those who might be expecting this a little bit earlier on a Sunday. This is a bit of a late night upload. For anyone that's still watching on a Sunday, you might be watching it on the Monday. Had a family function, so I've been having great fun at that all day, carrying on the enjoyment at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I've come back right at the end of the day and uploading this rather late in the evening. I'm guessing most people will see this in the morning, if at all. You might just be so euphoric from a comfortable Tottenham victory. Just wasn't it nice to just fully enjoy a match? I mean, I'm sure from a fan perspective, there was no fear. There's no worry about what was going to happen because of the way the game played out. Two goals in each half. For a journalist, for myself, it was just lovely to be able to write kind of the stuff I had to write and know by midway through the second half, the end of this isn't going to change now. I'm not going to have to rewrite big sections of this. I'm not going to have to adjust all of my player ratings because ultimately you can't give a player that mark when they've lost or drawn or whatever. It was lovely just to get through a game that was normal. It was a really nice, enjoyable game, some lovely goals, some lovely moments, a little injury scare, which thankfully didn't seem to come to anything in that moment. Obviously, I'm sure it'll be checked with Mickey van der Ven, but yeah, he came through it and produced a little bit of magic towards the end as well. Look, we have to straight away say there was the Everton side they were up against were, of course, suffering a fair few injuries and absences. They only made one change from their opening game. I think it was Ashley Young who was out suspended. What I would say about all the injuries and absences is Spurs had a lot of those last season. They had a long period from November onwards where they had double figures in unavailable players. When people look back over last season and they do their stats, they do their looking across the results or whatever, and points gained, things like that, they probably don't take into account that Spurs had a load of players missing, load of players injured, absent at international tournaments in January as well. So I kind of feel like you've also got to apply that same logic to when you're playing someone like Everton who are, struggling, especially defensively. They were missing some numbers. Ultimately, if Spurs couldn't use it as an excuse, why should the opposition that come to Spurs? And ultimately, you've just got to get on with it. And I think there was a lot to also take from the game in other aspects as well. I thought the set pieces Spurs were good at both ends. I've seen a couple of people saying otherwise. I actually thought they defended pretty well. They ended up with a clean sheet as well. I think I said this in the previous video. I actually felt that they dealt with set pieces at Leicester quite well. And I felt like, bearing in mind, Everton caused them horrendous issues at Goodison Park last season. And we know, obviously, that the targeting of Vicario, stuff like that. I actually felt they did pretty well, Spurs, on this occasion, and in the way they, the way they dealt with the height that Everton have and the strength they have at set pieces. And yeah, it was. I think Postecoglou will be as happy with that and the clean sheet as he will with the goals and the manner of the performance as well. I think it kind of was all a nice little package, all with a bow on top. When it comes to set pieces and also other stuff in the club, I do think a bit of credit has to certainly go to the new coaching duo. Nick Montgomery and Sergio Raimondo came in this summer in the wake of Chris Davies' departure to Birmingham. And both, from what I understand, talking to various people, have made their mark at the club, behind the scenes. And they're two, I think you might have hopefully remember me saying this in previous videos, they're both very disciplined men. Raimundo was in the armed forces and Montgomery's family have a background in the armed forces as well. So they have that kind of military background to them. And that's very much taken into their work and the way they are and what they expect on those training pitches and then in matches as well. And I think look, I'm not saying that the coaching staff there were letting everyone have sitting on the beach chairs and having a laugh. I'm sure they're all very disciplined as well, and we know Postecoglou is. I just think it's adding more with that mindset, but also with their own skill sets as well. I think there's been a quite an important thing. The coaching is quite a collective effort under Postecoglou. You've heard me say this before. He gives out lots of delegation. They take sections of training sessions, 15 minutes each, things like that as well. And that also applies to set piece organisation. But from what I understand, Nick Montgomery has had quite a strong involvement in all the set piece work since he's come in at both ends of the pitch as well, which I think it's there to see. I mean, obviously, Christian Romero heads home the first attacking set piece goal of the season for Tottenham, but I also think the defending, like I say, has been a lot better from set pieces. It's like I was kind of looking at it quite closely. It's kind of like a hybrid zonal / man marking thing now. It felt at times last season it was really stuck in the zonal thing, which wasn't working for them. But this feels more like a hybrid thing with some players assigned to man mark and some players zonal marking, which I think, unless I'm mistaken, is how Spurs used to mark under Conte. I think that was how it worked with them as well, and it feels like they've maybe gone back to that. I could be wrong. They may have been doing that all last season, but it certainly feels like it's not just a pure zonal thing, and that's kind of asking around seems to be backed up with what people are telling me. So, I think it looks much tighter, and I think, especially against Everton, I thought the players kind of seemed to, again, show more discipline, and they showed a lot of responsibility in kind of their certain roles. And I've seen a few people saying differently on social media. I don't know, maybe it was just in the stadium. Perhaps there was just a few nervy moments that maybe the only one I can remember was there was a bit of a scramble, a bit of head tennis from one corner, I think it was. Other than that, I don't really remember Everton having any real dominance in set pieces. Either way, it feels like it's a building block. Progress is being made in something that was a problem. And you might, again, remember me saying in previous videos that at Celtic, second season, set pieces at both ends improved considerably. And Postecoglou kind of alluded to that last season. And I wonder now whether this is all part of that process. But so that was a good thing for me. What's really weird in the funny way football works is that you look at yesterday's performance, 4-0 win. You look at Monday night's performance, 1-1 draw. Spurs actually had less efforts yesterday than they did against Leicester. It's just a weird way football works and the perception how goals change things. They had 13 efforts at goal yesterday, Saturday, if you're watching this on Monday. They had 15 at the King Power Stadium on Monday night. Jordan Pickford had less saves to make, 3. Admittedly, 4 went past him, whereas Mads Hermansen made 5 on Monday night. They once again had 71% of the possession. That was a constant for the two games, and they dominated the play with 540 passes. I think Everton only had something like 180. It was a very, very low number. But the difference is this time Spurs took their chances. It's just simple yet obvious thing about football. You put it between those two stick things, the thing with the net, technically 3 sticks and some other bits and pieces and a net, you're going to win the games. They had 7 shots on target, same as the Leicester match, but this time 4 of those went in the net instead of the 1. Obviously, we know about Bissouma's. It had to be Bissouma. As soon as you saw him on the score sheet, you thought he's probably going to have a brilliant game. He's going to have to invest everything he's got in this performance, and he did. To be fair, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but the goal was. It was like a curling rocket with his instep. It was a lovely goal. At first viewing, I just thought he had smashed it. But when you actually watch it back in slow-mo and close up, he really gets like a whip on it. He cuts across it with his foot. And it all originated from quite a good play down the right, actually. Brennan Johnson and Dejan Kulusevski linking up quite nicely. The ball comes back to Kulusevski. He runs in. Lovely feet. The Everton players are all kind of scared to touch him, and he tees it up for Bissouma to smash it home. Just obviously smashes off the crossbar, which is his first competitive goal for the club. We scored against, was it QPR? We had that funny little moment where Postecoglou kind of walked by him and said, yeah, it was only a friendly Biss. And here we are. What? 2 games in the season, and he has done it for real as well. And it was very much something he needed, Bissouma. He did his apology to the crowd. He was kind of doing this sort of thing to the crowd and like banging the badge on his chest and grabbing it. And then he went over to Postecoglou, had a bit of a hug. And look, it's the first step back, I guess, for him to try and get back into, to borrow a phrase from Meet the Parents, Postecoglou's circle of trust. He is currently sitting outside it, and he's got to work his way back into it. And I think if you felt the first goal showed Spurs' ability under Postecoglou's reign of looking for space, probing for space in a compact, tight opposition backline. So the second goal was all about the pressing, and certainly one man who it all came from Sonny. Brilliant pressing down the left-hand side, forcing them to hit it back to Pickford, and then just sprinting at Pickford, who made a horrendous howler of a first touch, and then kind of clonked Sonny as Sonny got the ball and rolled it into the empty net. And third goal, like I say, Christian Romero, powerful header on his 100th appearance for the club, towering above James Tarkowski, who was past fit for the game. And that went off the crossbar from James Maddison's corner. Fourth goal, we know, was all about the running of Mickey van de Ven. It was kind of like the reverse, wasn't it, with less going past players, I guess, but of Sonny's Puskás winning goal that Jan Vertonghen got the assist for. This was kind of the opposite, in that Van de Ven did all the work running up the pitch and then picked the perfect moment to knock it to Sonny, who still, to be fair, had a little bit to do. And he cuts in and whacks it through Pickford's legs. But yeah, it was terrific. And I love the celebration. I was watching the celebration back as well. And there's a moment where it's almost like Van de Ven looks at Sonny and goes, oh, don't just kind of, to just claim this is all you. He kind of gives him a bit of shoulder barge. And Sonny's well aware who helped him out for this goal. So I asked Postecoglou about the performance after the game and whether this was the kind of result, the performance that his team has been threatening, like I said at the top of the video. And he said the performance was excellent. I said after the game, I thought the performance last week was excellent too, but you've also got to turn that sort of dominant performance into outcomes and results. We did today. We looked really threatening going forward all the time. We created many chances, different kinds of chances. I thought we handled their threat, which they still are, from set pieces and long balls, really well today. So there was a little discipline in both aspects of the game. And he was asked about having threats all over the pitch. He said it's what we want to evolve into. We're still in the process of doing that. We had Decky playing in the midfield today, and I thought he was really good. And we had Sonny scoring a goal through the middle, and then he scored a goal when he went out wide. I think we looked to threat from very different areas and even set pieces. So if we're going to turn compelling performances into consistent results, you need to have more than one avenue of attack, and I thought we showed that today. Yeah, it was an interesting question as well that was asked to him. I was trying to think who it came from. I think it might have been Jack from The Athletic. Asked him whether this season will be defined by how ruthless Spurs are in front of goal, similar to Saturday's performance. And he actually said, not necessarily. I still think it's about performance. I think if you perform like we have these first 2 weeks and you keep producing that multitude of chances, then more often than not you'll win games of football. I still think it's the performance. I think once you start focusing just on the outcome, on goals, because even today I thought, we created some unbelievable opportunities and could have scored more goals. But the idea is that you keep your level of performance up, and I think what you don't want to do is, after last week, change your approach looking for goals. We haven't changed our approach. We played the same way as last week, but I just felt today we had a little bit more variety in our attacks. We went out wide, we went through central areas, we made some fantastic runs through the middle. I think Maddison had a couple of one-on-one opportunities. He did. I think that's part of it all as well. If we can become a team that's not just a threat in one way, I think that'll help us. Set pieces is another one. Kuti is unbelievable in the air, and we usually have some good deliveries in there. All those kind of things help. That's something we know about Postecoglou. If you make it all about the scoreline and the hunt for goals, it's kind of not what he's about. It sounds weird because, of course, the game is about scoring goals and it's about winning matches. But in his mind, he's always been very clear of not being desperate and searching for that scoreline to change. It's about playing the style of football, playing this brand of football, continuously recycling the ball, pressing, get the ball back, create chances. And he's always said, if that's the bit you focus on, that little box in the corner, it doesn't say it here, but that little box in the corner that's got the score in it, that's going to change. It's going to change in your favour because you've purely focused on the match itself and your performance rather than focusing desperately on changing that scoreboard. Someone with a massive exhaust right now outside the house at almost 10 o'clock at night when I'm recording this. Thanks for that. That's very helpful. Hopefully you can't hear it anyway. But yeah, it was... I felt like this was kind of a strangely important victory. I'm not saying it was a must-win game or anything like that, but I just feel like Postecoglou's kind of setting this tone that they don't want to. They want to be up there. They want to be around there and about, up in the kind of upper echelons of the league table. And he didn't want. That was probably the most annoying thing for him about the Leicester game was that they were 2 points ahead of some of the other teams. And I think just this game, if he's got those kind of beliefs and expectations this season, then, especially with the games coming up, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home, you kind of had to win this game. You had to get that momentum going, and it felt that that's exactly what they did. So yeah, they did, and it was good fun. There was less scary drama and just more enjoyment and quite a fair bit of quality, which we'll talk about as well. And part of that involved the return of Bissouma. Look, it was a risk bringing him straight back into the team. I really thought it was as soon as his club suspension was done. I was a little bit surprised. I think a lot of people in the press box were quite surprised as well. I think Rodrigo Bentancur's concussion ensured it happened. I don't think it would have done otherwise. Kind of Postecoglou had a decision to make, couldn't he? He could either further punish Bissouma by making him sit on the bench and watch, 18-year-old Archie Gray go out there and play in the midfield, or he could hand Bissouma some reward for a week in which he has, to be fair, he's responded to what's happened. Very public kind of I suppose judgment of him and punishment by Postecoglou as well. And yeah, he's been the good boy in class, let's put it that way. I mean, Postecoglou said it best. He spoke on Friday about it. He said, you know what it's like when you punish your child and they do everything right for the next 2 days? He said he's first in the meetings, he's doing everything right, but there's always temptation down the road, so we'll see. I've always believed in opportunity for redemption and learning, but we're still in that space at the moment with Biss. But obviously that door closes after a while if there are repeated indiscretions. He's been good, but I would have been surprised if he wasn't. It's always the key with Biss is consistency. The consistency of behaviour, what he does. It's not that he's doing a lot of bad things. Obviously, the last transgression was very serious, but it's the little things along the way also. I think sometimes that manifests in his game, where he can be really good, and he'll have a moment when he's not. I think it all correlates. From our perspective, it's about trying to continually guide him, but it's up to him. He's got to continue to try to be the best version of himself that he can possibly be. So he handed Bissouma the chance to make amends somewhat to Postecoglou and his teammates. I think he just knows Archie Gray is a phenomenal young talent and he's going to get minutes galore this season. He is. So there's no need to kind of throw him into this situation almost just to teach Bissouma a lesson, I suppose. And I also think there's an element of he'd clearly decided that he was going to use Maddison and Kulusevski together, which unusual in itself, but we'll discuss those two. And I think he felt like that would have been maybe a lot of pressure on young Archie Gray to kind of deal with mopping up everything behind two very attacking players, whereas maybe with Bissouma, he maybe have that experience to deal with that a little bit better. And yeah, Bissouma, he continued his penitent path with really good display, to be honest. It was excellent. Not only did it have that ridiculously good goal, that blockbuster of a goal, but it was full of running and very little in the way of those lapses of concentration that Postecoglou spoke about. It is true. You see it with Bissouma. He can put in an 88-minute terrific performance, but there can just be a couple of really silly, sloppy balls or getting caught in possession, which just completely change how the performance is perceived. And it was... it's a funny one because, Bissouma loves playing for Postecoglou. He sees him as like a father figure. He's spoken about that. I think he's called him like an uncle at times. Postecoglou's not someone that many people would run over and hug in terms of players. He keeps them... They love playing for him, but he does keep them at a little bit of a distance. And I feel like in Bissouma, he's got someone that just really kind of loves him. He loves everything that he's done for him. And that maybe makes it all the more frustrating for Postecoglou, and perhaps like a fatherly way, in a strange, odd way, that he's kind of let him down. And he joked to the BBC afterwards, Postecoglou, it seemed to work, so I'm going to ban him next week and then bring him back the week after, mate, as that seems to do the trick. And he said, Biss was great today, not just his goal, he was really disciplined. But discipline is a word I use with him a hell of a lot. Hopefully he gets to the point where he understands how important it is, because we want to see the best of Biss playing for this football club. And that's the thing, isn't it? This is a kind of the problem for Bissouma is he's not 18. He's not 21. He's not even 25. He turns 28 on Friday. He really should be at a point in his career where he's absolutely settled, focused on his football, and that is the only thing that is like the driving factor for him. Instead of all the superfluous, silly stuff outside it, especially when you've got the ability he's got, there shouldn't be the silly distractions. Some players and people can have distractions of a much bigger kind and really difficult things to get over. But when it's the kind of things that interrupt Bissouma's flow, and obviously the most recent one with the nitrous oxide laughing gas, it's just like utterly pointless stuff that is of no benefit to him whatsoever. It can only serve to kind of slow him down and stunt his career. And yeah, it's the kind of stuff he just needs to chuck away, really, because he is popular around Spurs and the club, and he's like seen as this quite fun figure. But so is Son, and Son is the most ridiculously good example of a player for all of the others to look up to. The young players can look up to him. He is one of the best players in the world. He is in that kind of elite bracket. If you ask people if you were to ask people about top Premier League players, Sonny's going to be one of them. Bissouma isn't, but he could be. He could absolutely be in that bracket. This latest indiscretion, it's not the first in Bissouma's career. We know that. But it kind of needs to be the last, because it needs to be... We've been talking about this, Guesty and I, when we were doing the podcast and stuff, or just in general chatting about Spurs. This really, especially after other opportunities he's had to bounce back from stuff, this needs to be the thing that ignites his career. It needs to be the spark, because if it's not, it's a real wasted opportunity for kicking his career up to the level it should be. He could be so much better. Because when he's on song, so are Spurs. Only Romero and Pedro Porro had more touches of the ball than Bissouma with 86. I think Maddison had the same. When he's on his game, nobody is as good for me as him picking up the ball from the defence and spreading it wide, just beating the press, that ability to twist and turn and get away. I think he is probably unparalleled in the Spurs team. I think Bentancur is a very close second, but I think for me, Bissouma is the best of that when he's fully on it. And I asked Postecoglou about him, and he said, Biss was good. We know Biss is a good footballer. It's about him being the best version of himself, and he'll only get there if discipline is a big thing for him. And I thought it was a disciplined performance from him today. Not just the goal he scored, but he had a really important job for us. He knew they'd play fairly direct, and he had to be there to mop up the second balls and intercept things. And he was clean for the most part in possession, so it was a good performance. There's no doubting his ability. He has that ability to do something special, but he needs to make sure that he gives it everything. He tries and endeavours to do everything right on and off the field to give him the platform to show who he could be as a footballer. We certainly believe in him. We're certainly giving him an opportunity, but as I said before, that's not a never-ending thread. At some point, you need to cut it and it's really up to him to keep going on. So yeah, it's very clear. He was very, very clear on it. I kind of feels like this is a little bit last chance saloon, really, for Bissouma. That's kind of just the sense I got from his words. That there's only kind of so much rope you can give someone before they just kind of end up hanging themselves with it. And it's, Postecoglou's always believed him and he's had his back. And there's obviously little bits and pieces behind the scenes that have not been perfect. But Postecoglou has maybe just kept saying, come on, you can do this. And then he goes and does something like that, and it kind of probably feels like he's been slapped in the face a little bit, Postecoglou. And yeah, Maddison said after the game, he told the BBC, we all know his ability. He's a ridiculous player at times. He's got a skill not many have. The gaffer is a great man with good morals, and he has to keep working hard. That's reminded me as well. If you haven't seen it this week, have a little look at the Premier League. Each team has produced this video with how to pronounce all of their names properly. It has blown my mind. Oh my goodness. As if I wasn't pronouncing names wrongly anyway. There's a few ones. I had a little bit of vindication in that even Jamie Donnelly pronounces his name Jamie Donnelly. He actually really emphasises it it's like Donnelly. Watch it back. It was like, I'm trying to get myself into this habit of saying Donnelly. And there he goes and just says his name like it's Donnelly anyway. So there's him. There's... I'm going to have a nightmare remembering this, but I'm going to try to... It goes on. So the player I've been pronouncing, Lucas Bergvall, is not that at all. The way he pronounced it, I'm sure it's not exactly this, and I've had a few Swedish people telling me it's not quite how it sounds maybe to the English ear, but to the English ear, it sounds like he was almost saying Lucas Bergvall, which is going to be a nightmare for me to get my head round, because it's like when you sing a song that you've known from, I don't know, since the 80s, 90s, whatever, and you've always sung this certain line in it, and everyone looks at you and be like, what are you doing? And then you realise it's because the line is completely different words, you've just mangled some weird words together. That's kind of what I'm going to be like with some of these names. So, yeah, Lucius Bergvall, it kind of sounded like. I think the Lucius is slightly different in actuality. The other one that's an interesting one, and this is going to cause a few people kind of a differences in opinion in it, because Pap Matassar, when pronouncing his own name, said it Pape Matassar. From what I understand, his name is, and this was what I've always been told from the start, his name is Pap Matassar, but so many people call him Pape, including Postecoglou, that he is just such a polite, lovely young man that he's just decided, oh, yeah, Pape Matassar, that's me. And it's so weird, but that's not weird, but it's kind of sweet in a way. So I think he's just decided, yeah, I'll be Pape Matassar. If that's what you want, that's fine. But actually, his name is Pap, and it's pronounced like that. Someone gave me another instance. Apparently, there's a few times players in the Premier League have just gone, yeah, whatever. You're just saying it in your anglicised English version. Yeah, let's go with that while I'm here. Whereas when they go back to their own country, it's completely different. The other one that I know, people have said this to me, and it's quite right, is I've always said Ben Davies, and it's Ben Davis is how it's pronounced. And that's absolutely spot on. That's just, again, me having reported on a player for 10 years and completely pronounced his name wrong. But I think that was it. But there were some mad ones from other clubs that are just completely different. But there you go. So, sorry, little sidetrack there, but hopefully... So if you hear me saying... Lucius Bergvall, you know who I'm talking about. It's the guy we formerly called Lucas Bergvall. Yeah, watch it. It's on, I don't know, I think the Spurs might have put it out, but someone sent it to me. It's on YouTube. And it's quite funny hearing some of the players say their own name and the way they say it. And like they say it like slowly for dummies and stuff like that. It's very good. So yeah. So it's all about Bissouma. And that's the key thing for me now, is all about Bissouma. He needs to make sure that this is the fuse that ignites his career. It's not just like a blip where he suddenly started to get better after making a mistake. Because for me, Bissouma has met the best possible person at the best possible time for his career in Ange Postecoglou. He needs to use him, but ultimately only he can decide his own path. So, Yeah, key time for him. I'd love to see him continue in a better vein because he could just be so fantastic. He really can. And we'll talk about the rest of that midfield. You've got Kulusevski and Maddison, very attack-minded midfield trio. It was weird to see Kulusevski play with Maddison because we kind of got used to last season him being the alternative to Maddison. And he did pretty well, to be honest. And obviously played most of the summer as a false nine, which worked quite well for him. And it was just fascinating to see how it worked without Pat. I'm going to keep calling him Pat because I'm going to call his name properly. Pat Matasar's mobility. You didn't have that in the midfield. But I think it worked. It did work. And I think it's going to be a tactic that maybe against teams that are not as good on paper at home, I think it could work quite well. And also, it's another indication, I think, that Postecoglou sees Kulusevski as one of his eights, one of his number eights, rather than, and obviously occasionally number 10 when the system changes slightly, rather than one of his wingers, because there are a lot of wingers. There really are. And I think Kulusevski will still play there occasionally on the wing when maybe he just needs a little bit of strength and a different kind of player. But we know he's not the natural fit for the Postecoglou prototype whatsoever. I just thought he was really good against Everton. He kind of showcased that skill set that I think makes him a really good option as a number 8 in the Postecoglou system. He's got strength. He's got ridiculous stamina. He's got this kind of box-to-box running ability. He made 2 dribbles on the day, made more key passes than any other player on the pitch, with 4 to his name. Even if he saw the ball far less, and like I said, Bissouma and Maddison got it 86 times they touched the ball. Kulusevski only touched it 32 times. His work, the assist for Bissouma, the whole movement was brilliant. The link up with Johnson in the build-up was also very good as well. And I think you look at him, he's another option of Postecoglou as an 8, and you've also got Sarr, you've got Bentancur, you've got Berival, you've got Archie Gray, you've got Scott Bissouma and Maddison, and Wilson Odobert, who we're going to talk about. He can also play as an 8 or a 10 as well. So there are a lot of bodies in that midfield now. It's a packed place in the squad, a packed department, really. And obviously some people would still like more quality, and I can still understand why, but there's a lot of numbers there. There really are. In terms of Maddison, I think maybe we'll look back now on pre-season as him shaking off the rust. That's maybe the best way to put it now. He's started the season well, He's not lasting the full games quite as well yet, but that's a fitness thing. That will come because he only had 1 game over 45 minutes, I think, in the summer, if I remember correctly. But he's got 2 assists in 2 games now. Lovely whipped-in corner for Romero. And also, of course, at the King Power, that beautiful curling ball for Porro to head home. He just looks a constant threat. And I really like the link-up he had down the left with Odobert and Udogie. They work really well in little triangles. And Maddison had 2 key passes, 3 shots at goal, 1 tackle, 2 clearances, and he blocked 2 Everton shots. They did a fair bit of defending as well. He actually, interestingly, I saw in the stats, won 2 aerial duels, which is not something you would really imagine James Maddison being, a pioneer of winning aerial. Pioneer? Being a man who wins aerial duels is probably what I was more looking to say. And he had, like Postecoglou alluded to, a couple of really good 1v1 chances from Romero balls. There was one pinged over the top to him and he slid it into the keeper, into Pickford. And in the second one, he tried to get a touch and couldn't quite get it kind of away or past Pickford. So he spoke after the game in a club interview. I was just looking to see if there's any bits and pieces that were really interesting in it. I'm going to say this one because he spoke about that trio down left. He said, I feel in a good place. When you feel dangerous and feel like a threat. We started the game so well on the left side. Me, Wilson and Destiny. We had a really good dynamic going and we got the balance perfect of sometimes leaving Wilson 1v1, sometimes me running the half space. And we had some dangerous crosses where we could have scored, could have had a couple more assists. But the goals and assists are important for a player like myself because that's what I'm in the team to do. That's what the club bought me for. So it's nice to get the return on the chances and that I create them. We've said this before, but while being left out of England's squad for the summer would have been very difficult for him in the Euros, it kind of ended up working for Spurs because he had a summer just to rest and get his body back to where it should be. And he said, I feel great. The disappointment of missing the Euros meant the silver lining of that was I've had a full summer to rest, recover, and really get my ankle back perfect. Working hard and coming back fit with hunger. And now I feel really good at the minute, so hopefully that can continue and I can keep contributing to help our team win. Postecoglou spoke about Maddison after the game as well. He said, I thought Maddison was really good and again really disciplined. It's not an easy game when you play against a team like Everton because you know there's not going to be a hell of a lot of space in the front third, but you've also got to work defensively for second balls. I thought he was really good at doing that for us. He mopped up a few times when they've gone long and kept the ball for us. He's had a really good synergy with Wilson early on. They worked really well together and then he made some great runs. I think the key for me with Madders, a bit like Biss in a different angle, is if he's physically good, if he's feeling 100% physically and he's fit and he's training every day, he can produce those kind of performances. It's when that drops off a little bit that you see his performance, well, I think it affects him as well. You know, if he doesn't feel 100%, there's no doubt he's at that now, that he's training every day. He trains hard every day. He's had a real strong pre-season. I think that makes him feel like, you know what, I can go out there and do the stuff I do. And if Maddison does the stuff he can do, he's going to be superb for Spurs this season. And it did kind of feel like that last season, that there was certain moments when he didn't maybe train in certain weeks on certain days. And yeah, it just didn't quite work out as he wanted it to, really. The consistency wasn't there after those first terrific 10 games or so. You could obviously say the injury, massively. He was out for 2.5 months. It's difficult to get that sharpness back. But having spoken to some people at Leicester over the last, year since he arrived, but also quite recently, funny enough, before the first game, and the kind of theme there was similar, that he just he would be flying for Leicester, and he would just have an injury that would knock him out of his stride, and he found it quite difficult to get back into that rhythm. And we've seen that at Spurs so far, and that's something that he's got to work out around. But yeah, no, it was good. And then we had the two players, you could call them, on the left, who very different stages of their Tottenham career. Wilson Odobert, of course, playing his first game for Tottenham. Sonny playing, I think it was his 410th game for Spurs. Odobert has been a big success behind the scenes so far in terms of impressing Postecoglou and the coaching staff, and he's just got this terrific ability, technique, pace. He dribbles without fear and just goes and goes and goes at players. And I think, bearing in mind he'd already played against Luton in the Championship, he was match fit as well, which was why, Postecoglou threw him in. This 19-year-old got his chance. Like, as soon as his work permit came through on a Tuesday, and there he was ready to stick him in there as well. And Postecoglou made a kind of a big thing on Friday in the press conference before about how he and the club had identified Odobert early in the summer as someone they went for. And I think Burnley it wasn't as cut and dried as go in there and get him. I think Burnley made a real attempt to keep Odobert this summer and keeping for the Championship for next season as well. But yeah, Spurs eventually came in with the bid we know, £25 million, and the £5 million more in add-ons, and that convinced them to let him go. So, yeah, I mean, you could maybe argue, could it have been done earlier in the summer? Of course, but I think everything I've kind of asked about around this, and also the Burnley side, is that Burnley were kind of, especially as he was only 19, really hoping to keep hold of him, and they weren't taking any lowball offers. They were trying to get as much as they could from him if they had to sell him, and that's led to a kind of no doubt a bit of discussions either side, and eventually getting their man. So yeah, but I was quite surprised because Vincent Kompany loves him, and he was talking last season at Burnley about how he didn't really want to talk about him because he knew someone would nick him, and also because he was like one of the players he felt could be one of the top in the game. And I think, in a weird way, Spurs were probably quite fortunate that Elise ended up going to Bayern, and obviously they got so many wingers that they just couldn't go add another. Otherwise, I think Kompany probably would have said, oh yeah, by the way, there's this lad back at Burnley I'd love, if he didn't already. But Postecoglou was the man that ended up with him, and he's one of those players that will get the crowd up on their feet, as he did. They loved watching him. Plays without fear. He's going to be... I tell you what, the biggest thing that impressed me about him was his first touch. Yeah, he's got the dribble and the pace. We know he's got that. But sometimes you can have players that have got that, someone like a Adama Traore, who will just be blistering with that. But actually, sometimes the technique and the control isn't there as well. Whereas with Odobert, the first touch is phenomenal. That's probably the thing that stood out way more than anything else for me, was that there was a couple of times when there was like a beautiful crossfield ball. I remember Sonny playing one across to him as well, and it was pinged across to him. And he just stopped it dead in its tracks. And there was another time when he was on the run and he took a long pass into his run with him. I was really, really impressed with that. And he... the Opta stats showed that he registered most dribbles in the game with 7, the most touches in the opposition box with 7 of any player on either side. He contested more duels, 14, than any other Tottenham player, and he won the joint most with 6. So yeah, I would say it was very exciting to watch. Loads of great stuff to him. He is going to be a terrific player, I think, for Spurs going forward. You can see what his game's about. I think the only thing that let him down was the final ball. I think the final ball was the only thing that showed he was a 19-year-old. The rest of him was very much yeah, okay, I've been playing this game forever. Shove me in front of 60,000 fans and I'll be fine. But I think when he tried to play the final ball, yeah, it wasn't there. He was... and that will come. It's not just about the pass, it's also about knowing where his teammates are going to run into, their movement, exactly where he needs to find them with the ball. That will come. And he is only 19. He will be learning bucket loads every single week at Spurs. He tired definitely in the second half. He had that slightly tired pass across his own half, which McNeil, I think it was, intercepted. It ended up being a chance that... Vicario had to save from Lindstrom. But other than that, it was very promising, very interesting debut. But yeah, just maybe without the actual threat in the final third. But what he did do was draw others towards him. And everything else could be worked on. I asked Postecoglou about him, and he said, exciting. He said he's different from our other wingers. He goes at his opponent, and even if he wasn't successful, he went at him again. I think that's exactly why we brought him to the club. I mean, he's 19 years old. His first game for his new club at home in front of 60,000 people. Yeah, really exciting. And like I said earlier, I thought he worked really well with Maddison and Doggy as a bit of a trio there, little triangle passes and everything. It was very good. And I think for a team like Tottenham that's often had problems prying open quite tight, deep, compact defences, someone like him, someone like Odobert, is either going to be able to get past players or he's going to scare defences so much that they're going to overcommit with him with a couple of players, and that leaves space for someone else. So, yeah, I think he's going to have a good time at Spurs. He is. Yeah, I was just trying to think of anything, other little bits and pieces he had. No, I think that's the main thing. Sonny was asked about him. Sonny, you might remember, I think it was about Archie Gray and... Lucas Berlival, that he said this before, but he's quite good on praising young players, Sonny, while also quite seriously saying, yeah, but you've got a long way to go, lad. You've got so much more to do. Don't get carried away with yourself. And he did this again when speaking about Odobert. He said he was very, very impressive. He's been training with the team maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe a little bit more, but you can see how much quality he has. And he understood how we want to play. And I was very, very pleased to see him on the left side going one-on-one and making a good impact. I mean, it's his first game. Let's not celebrate too much, With the young players, we need to stay very humble. We also have to take care of these players. We can't let them celebrate that much after one game because football has a long, long period and long season. So I'll also tell him I'm trying to help him, the young lads, because it's not everything, One game is not everything. I hope he can continue the performance and keep the sharpness for a team. If he does, it will be very good. And today he was very, very impressive. But we have a long, long season ahead. I hope we can keep on performing like this all the way through the season. So, yeah, I mean, look, if Odobert needs any inspiration, just look at Sonny. Sonny is the benchmark for me for any attacking player coming into Spurs. Since some people trying to claim he's on the decline, or he can't play up front, or he's not as good on the left anymore, you can guarantee that if ever anyone doubts Sonny, it makes them look a bit daft with his next game. He'll go and do something like he did on Saturday and just play a cracking game. He really was. I mean, he's scored a goal, as Postecoglou said, one as a left winger and one as a striker. So you can't argue, he's rubbish on the left or he's rubbish up front. No, he's not. He's not. He's an absolute top-class player. He's now got 248 goal involvements in 410 games, 164 goals and 84 assists. The man is a machine. And I quite liked it. Ben Haynes, the Spurs TV guy, asked Sonny after the game. He said, with that moment when he pressed and won the ball off Pickford and he had an open goal, he was like, do you ever get nervous when you're in front of an open goal like that? And he just kind of looked at it and went, Ben, I'm Sonny. And then is quickly added with a smile, I'm joking. But I love that. I love that so much. He's 32 now, but he's not showing any signs of slowing down either. And not only in his game, but his actual pace. When you watch Van de Ven's run, watch Sonny alongside him. Sonny is keeping pace. And he had to score the goal. To kind of say that he's slower as well, but no. His work rate is phenomenal. I've got a quote coming where Postecoglou calls him the best presser at the club in those forward roles. And bearing in mind Van de Ven as well, it's like the Klopp's is the fastest player in the Premier League, and Sonny's matching him over the course of 80 yards, whatever it was. And I think he'll be a really good kind of mentor to someone like Odobert. I think he just has to look at him. I think Odobert's, from what I understand, is quite a quiet, young, unassuming lad who pays very close attention to what everyone's doing. And if he can do that to Sonny, hell of a player. And I think Postecoglou said this before. I think he said it on Friday as well in the pre-match press conference, that Sonny is the oldest outfield player at the club now, but he's the one that's most desperate to learn and improve still. And that says everything about the man. He is brilliant. He not only did he win earn his first goal with his pressing, but he also won the corner that Romero scored from. He actually did a nice little kind of lofted pass into the box that Romero should have scored from early on, but he hit a volley straight at the keeper. Postecoglou was after the game because Sonny said in the week that he wants to become a Spurs legend. I think he said it before a couple of weeks ago. Postecoglou was asked, is it days like Saturday that can help him get there, or is it kind of bigger things he needs to do? And Postecoglou said there's no sort of set criteria for that stuff. I've got no doubt that whenever he's done and dusted, and hopefully it's a long way down the track, he will be in esteemed company at this football club. But I love the fact that he's still motivated to do more. That's the key thing for us. He was really good today. It's the reason I put him in the middle, because we know Jordan is a big part of their build-up play and they use him a lot. And Sonny's the best presser that we have in the front there. He's unbelievable. I think he relished that role and again showed his threat when he went out on the left with that great finish. And actually, I think what some might see as competition for Sonny in the likes of Odobert, you've got Timo Werner there as an option as well. I actually think it's a really good thing for Sonny because let's be honest, Spurs have run Sonny into the ground. They've used him so many times and so long in matches, and you're like, the man is not a machine. I know he seems like he is. He's going to break at some point. And now Spurs will have the ability to, whether it's Europa League and Carabao games, Carabao Cup games, or even just the odd Premier League game. I'm just saying to Sonny, have a rest. Have a rest in this game. Don't worry, we're not kicking you out the side or anything. Just have a rest in this game. Play a little couple of minutes at the end if you want, but we'll use one of these one of the other lads as a left winger, and Mikey Moore, talking to young lads, he can play them as well. And it'll be better for him. Sonny's body will be better this season. He'll be able to play at his peak condition and give peak performances across more of the season. No, he doesn't already. His stats and numbers are always superb, but if you allow him to be fresh for the kind of core of your games, you're going to get the best possible version of Sonny. You really are. There's so many options on those left. I spoke about Mikey Moore. I think I've seen some people already panicking. I think I said this a couple of weeks back. We've got to be very careful not to overanalyze the players that aren't on the bench to begin with, because there's going to be so many players that are not going to make it onto the bench across this season. When everyone's fit, it is a very strong bench. And even right now, with a few people out, Solanke, Bentancur out, it's a strong bench still. And you're going to have people like, he's only 17 years old, Mikey Moore. He is going to maybe go to games as like the 21st man and things like that to begin with. But it'll be made very clear to him, he wasn't sold a lie to sign his contract or anything like that. He will have been told very clearly, look, you're going to get game time. You're going to get minutes there. Carabao Cup, you're going to get minutes there. You're 17 years old. We're going to build you up in the right way. And that's kind of what can happen for him now. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about Mikey Moore. He's going to play the odd under-21s game, like against Bristol City in the trophy, because that was against senior opposition. That was a big one for him. And you've got the likes of Manor Solomon, who's can't even be involved. He's going to be, the aim at the moment is to loan out to Leeds. I had expected kind of, while I was away at my family do, to come back and that would all be signed and sealed. Last I heard when I last asked, because I haven't asked too much today, but earlier this morning, it was still kind of little details between the two clubs was being tidied up. But, we'll find out. I would hope there's nothing that's going to kind of stop it, but it does feel like it's been going on a little while. We'll probably find out more tomorrow on that one and how it's all worked out or not. But I think it's a good move for him. I think Manor Solomon. That's what I've always saying wrong as well. That was another one I learned from the video. I'm calling him Manor, but it's Manor. If he's going somewhere like Leeds, that's like a Premier League team that is playing a level below, and the Championship is a decent standard. So fair play to him if that all goes through. What else have we said? It's Brendan Johnson. I got to talk about Brendan Johnson. He's still not finding his rhythm yet. He gets into some really good positions, but his touch is still letting him down. And I spoke earlier about Odobert's first touch. Brendan Johnson's can be quite inconsistent, and decision making, like Odobert, it's still not there yet. He was given the whole game because Odobert did start to tire in the second half. You could see that, but he needs to kind of. He can have some valid concerns, really, about his place will kind of be given to others, because there's a lot of people can play on that right. I've already spoken about Odobert's right-footed. He could play there if required. We know Kulusevski can be an option there. We've spoken about Mikey Moore. Sonny can technically play on the right as well. There are a lot of people that can play on that side. And look, Johnson's a 50 million man player, got 15 goal involvements last season. Postecoglou loves him, but he's got to find his stride. But that's the other cool thing about Spurs, is that I quite like the fact that the players they've got are not only players that can start and do terrifically, but they can also make a big impact from the bench. So let's say Odobert's on the bench, he's going to come on and absolutely destroy tired defences. And I think Johnson's similar. I think you bring Johnson on, I think he makes a huge impact as well. And even someone like Richarlison, you throw up top late in the game, and he's able to do that. I know some people were kind of like, well, was this not a game for Richarlison to start? I think they're still building him back up to fitness. He hasn't played football in a long time, and he's just been getting a couple of minutes here and there in the last few games. And I think, even though Postecoglou said before the game when I asked him, he's fit to start, I still think you want him to be in a position where if you need him to start against Newcastle, which is on paper the harder of the two, that's the one you want him for. You probably don't start him and risk him doing some damage to himself through tiredness in the first game, or second game technically. But yeah, we'll see for Richarlison and whether they change that team up for the game at Newcastle. Obviously, a very different threat that they're going to be facing as well. It's all about the depth, though. It is. It's about. Especially when these games come every 3 days, we're going to have from next month onwards. We've got the Europa League draw on. Transfer deadline day is going to be a busy one. It's 30th, isn't it, this year, on the Friday. But normally I'm like working away at my desk, phone going bananas, trying to find out all the various stuff about incomes and outgoings. This time in the morning, we're going to have the Europa League draw, which is a weird thing. It's not so much a draw more as here's the pot, work it out, because we're going to work it out as well who you're going to get. But we'll have that on the morning of deadline day. And then there's a presser. It's the only day really a press conference can be ahead of the Newcastle game. So, yeah, a last chance, I guess, to ask Postecoglou about anything happening. So you might know a little bit earlier in the day. But sorry, I had a very late night working on the football stuff, and then running around playing with loads of my nieces and nephews' kids. That makes you feel old when your nieces and nephews have kids that I was mucking around with today, and they've got a trampoline and they're all going mad on that. So yeah, I'm a great uncle, which is... I'm just taking that as I'm a great uncle rather than I'm a great uncle kind of thing. Well, so I've absolutely gone off on a tangent there. But yeah, ultimately, he's got that squad depth now. I feel like I haven't gone back to what I was just saying. But there you go. There you go. It's I know transfer deadline day. Yes, yeah. There's a lot happening that day, so I will still be trying to get everything I possibly can. So keep an eye kind of across my social media feeds for all of that. But I'll also be pretty busy in the presser and doing all the Europa League stuff as well. Whew, I'm glad I found my way back. It's the weeds were across the path, but I managed to find a way through. That's my brain for you. This is why I understand sometimes people say, oh, can you do timestamps on these things as well? I would be here forever. The point of these videos being a little bit different to everyone else's, or not everyone else's, but other people's videos, is that I try and talk about everything. I try to cover every possible topic that I can think of, anything that pops in my head. And I don't know, I would imagine I touch upon hundreds of different things. So timestamps would just be insane. And these videos are very much raw things. They're kind of meant to be more video podcasts than incredibly professional, short, snazzy videos for the TikTok generation. They're very much kind of like a podcast. And obviously I've got a work podcast with Guesty, Golden Guest Talk Tottenham. So that's the reason I don't put this out as an audio thing on Spotify or anything like that. It is purely kind of, for those who want to watch a video or maybe just shove it on in the background and have the audio. I think if you've got YouTube, is it premium or something, you can turn your screen off and have it as an audio thing. But ultimately, yeah, it's just a very raw thing. It's me sitting on this sofa, wall behind me that still needs a paint. That on-air sign from my daughter is like the one change that's come, I think, over the last years or a few years. So yeah, it was never meant to be one that was going to take up loads of my time, like doing chapters, all this sort of stuff. It's just like brain, mouth, out there. If you guys want to watch it cracking, that's great. If you don't, I completely understand as well, because it's a very different format to a lot of the in-your-face, professional, slick, lot of bits and pieces. But hopefully, my hope is that I give you a little bit more behind-the-scenes stuff because of where my job takes me, I guess. Talking about not kind of behind the scenes, but behind the midfield and attack, the defence. You can see it's a defence that's still building its fitness. 3 of those 4 are still not, in their peak physical condition. But I did feel like they dealt with a lot that came their way really well. We did have that very scary moment with Mickey van der Ven when his knee hyperextended, which means it went in the wrong direction. It was horrible. You could see he was in a lot of pain. He's not the kind of guy that goes down very easily at all. And when he goes down and stays down something wrong, and his face looked like in real pain, kind of flashbacks of the hamstring injury against Chelsea back in November. And it was like, ooh, this is going to be it, isn't it? They're going to lose him again. And he went off the pitch for some treatment as well. He had treatment on the pitch, and then he went off the pitch, and you could see him quite gingerly trying to move it. Then he came back on. It was only about 2-3 minutes before half time. And it was like, okay, he's moving quite freely. And then, second half, it was just ridiculous. His tackles galore, interceptions, and his run was brilliant. And Postecoglou was asked whether he was worried about him ahead of the game. After that moment, and he said, "I was worried, obviously, but I'm worried about all of my boys, mate. They're all special to me. You certainly don't want anything, particularly when it's something awkward like that. And there is a real fear in that moment. It could be something, but speaking to him, he handled it okay. He said he was fine after a couple of minutes. It's important to us, but they're all important. That's why we've tried to create a squad where we're not going to just be putting him out there week after week. But it did. It looked like his day was over. Radu Dragusin was sent out to warm up. He actually looked like on the bench he was starting to kind of prepare and take his kind of training top off and put it on his normal one. And it didn't quite get that far. And, could you have taken him off at that point? Maybe at half time. But it would have declined. It would have deprived us all of that wonderful run through the centre of the pitch that came for the goal. I mean, he made 2 terrific interceptions in the game after he came back on, and just so many times he uses that pace and that strength to get back and snuff out stuff. And Maddison said about Van de Ven, he's brilliant. With the aggressive line we play, he's so important. He's so important for us. I know we always talk about it. His pace is just ridiculous. It really helps us play that high aggressive line. It's no coincidence that we get so many offsides. There's so many times. I know it gets delayed. It looks like we've conceded a chance, but it gets pulled back and it's offside. That's because of the work the back four do with that aggressive line. Sometimes you're going to get teams that are creative and they have good players, so they maybe have a well-timed run behind or play a nice pass when they're onside. And that's where Mickey uses his pace to get us out of trouble. He's a brilliant player. That run that he made. Poor Roman Dixon, a 19-year-old that come in for Everton as right back, he just bounced off him when he tried to. And he just drew in Tarkowski at the last second before playing it off to Sonny to score. Sonny in his post-match interview was saying that he was really kind of hoping that Van de Ven didn't play it to him any earlier than that moment. He said, when he was driving with the ball, I was just running with him and I was saying, if you pass it now, I'm going to kill you because there's such a long way to run. And he had so much space and I was like, yeah, commit, Mickey, commit. Like inside of my head, I was saying that. And he was committed and he played the perfect pass. He was like a playmaking player. After I scored the goal, the fans were singing Mickey's song, but cheers, Mickey. I was very pleased. Scoring goals is very pleasing, but seeing Mickey running like this and passing like this, it has to be Mickey's goal. So I'm very, very happy and grateful having these amazing players behind me. Postecoglou he thinks Van de Ven is going to be one of the best around. He was asked about him after the game. He said, outstanding. I mean, he's a pretty special footballer. Last year, when we had that back four up and running, we were a pretty compelling team. But we also know we can't just keep putting them out there. And I think with Romero, Mickey and Destiny, they're not at peak fitness at the moment. They all sort of missed pre-season. So we sort of knew this 2 or 3 weeks. We saw it last week about the 60-minute mark. They really started to fatigue, and we've just got to be really careful with them. But if we can get through the international break, then once the midweek games start, we can start rotating a little bit. And, because we need them at the peak of their performance, because when they're like that, they're outstanding footballers. In terms of the others, I thought Porro defended well, had a few moments where he got in some good interceptions. Doggy, you can see, is improving his fitness. Came off looking a little bit sore, and Postecoglou admitted that. He said he was a bit sore. He had that sort of tightness, both hamstrings and calves. Again, he was really fatigued last week, so trying to get as many match minutes into him as possible through this early period just to get his fitness up. I haven't spoken to the medical team, but when I spoke to him, he said he just felt tired. Perhaps noteworthy as well that when a doggy did come off, it was Jed Spence that came on, not Ben Davis. Ben Davis? He appears to be seeing Davis as more the centre-back cover, that fourth centre-back, as it were. Actually, before the game, I should say that Ben Davis was, I'm getting it right, was presented with a glass ball by Ledley King as a recognition of his 10 years at the club. And interestingly, I would have thought myself, I wouldn't have minded a centre-back who could also play left-back. I said that myself. But I think it was George Sessions from PA that asked, the Press Association, that asked Postecoglou on Friday whether he wanted and was actively looking for another centre-back in the last week of the transfer window. He said no. Look, we've obviously got Radu, who's going well and training really well. Ben can play centre-back as well, and Archie can play centre-back. So I think we're okay. Interesting that he's already seeing Archie Gray as a centre-back. Bear in mind, he literally played a couple of games in pre-season, and that was his first ever experience of being a centre-back. I spoke to Archie on the tour about it all. It was very, very new to him. And of course, he's got Romero. Romero was superb yesterday. It was one of his. It was up there with just a brilliant performance. It kind of started a bit shaky. He gave the ball away, I think, if I remember correctly, quite early on, but from that point on, brilliant. He's aggressive in all the right ways. He led the back line, which is what I really want him to do. I want him to be a leader in that Tottenham team. He can be it. He was last season's top scoring Premier League defender. This season, he's already bagged his first. Lovely, powerful header off the crossbar. Like I said earlier, he had a volley that he sent at Pickford that could have sent either side, and that would have been a goal. Two beautiful passes over the top to Maddison. He's got a bit of everything to his game. He really has. And, still just 26 years old, but he's maturing now. I just feel that. I know it's early days of this season, and he's going to do the odd daft thing that's going to kind of make us all think, oh, there he goes again. But actually, I do feel like those moments become more and few and far between. They do happen, but they do become rarer occurrences. Postecoglou thinks he's the absolute bee's knees. He sees him as the kind of player he wants all of his achievements, World Cup winner, 2 Copa Americas under his belt, 2 wins, that is the titles. He wants everything that's kind of in Romero. He wants it to seep into the rest of the squad as well. He was asked about him on Friday, actually, ahead of it being Romero's 100th game for the club. And he said, he's outstanding. Obviously, with all these kind of things, you have the image of a player from afar. And before I got here, I thought he was going to be really important to me because he's such a fantastic centre-back for club and country. But being here, watching him, the way he trains and the way he plays, unbelievably strong mindset. An absolute winner in everything he does. He was really important last year, and he's going to be really important moving forward. He's one of the players within this group who's achieved things from a team perspective and won those kind of and those kind of things are transferable. He's won the World Cup, he's won the Copa America, so he's part of a successful team, and I think he's a really strong influence in the group. It's great he plays his 100th game. I know he'll perform at the level he normally does. He's really consistent, but hopefully we'll make it a special day for him. He said on social media, Romero, after making that 100th game, he said, a special match and a pride to reach 100 games played with this shirt. Great game by all. This is the way to go. Thank you for all your support as always. Let's go at Spurs Official. And actually, a couple of days before, he did a bit for Sky, Romero, but he also did a really interesting 10-minute or so interview with the Spanish-speaking TV company or outlet, Telemundo Deportes. And it's really good. I should bear in mind these quotes I've taken from it are very much from the interview on YouTube with the kind of a mixture of YouTube's transcription, and I also ran it through Google. It may be that YouTube is owned by Google, isn't it? So there were differences, although it is the same company, I think. So he was asked about kind of his feelings this season and how he is within the club. He said, it's now the second season I've played in this system, and the truth is I like it a lot. I'm a central defender who really likes to play quite high up. It's a nice game system to play this year. I think they're correcting some things tactically from last season, and I think we're a little bit more of a solid team. Let's hope to show it during the season. Can't argue with that. It's conceded once in the 2 games. Really shouldn't have conceded that goal either. You can argue about the opposition all you want, absolutely. And you can argue about injuries that Everton have, mainly not in attacking areas. I don't think actually, when you looked at it, they had too many. I think there was one, Shaqiri, I forgot his name now. They had one the striker out, but yeah, you've got someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin who is constantly linked with big clubs and stuff like that. And Dwight McNeil is a good attacker. There are loads of decent kind of attacking outlets, but they just nullified. They did nothing. And like I said at the top of the show, I do agree. I absolutely agree with this. You can't do stats and say how poorly Spurs did in periods last season and ignore the fact that they had so many injuries, and then in the same breath say, oh yeah, but they only beat Everton. It's like, you can't really do both. It doesn't really make much sense. Romero was also asked about Solanke. He said, for me, he's a great striker. He's going to contribute much to this system we have, and I think he can contribute a lot to the team. Obviously, there's also Richie and a nice competition between the two, a very healthy competition on a daily basis, and let's hope they have an excellent season. And yeah, he just believes it's time now to match his international silverware with some club honours. He said, at club level, yes, obviously my wish is to try and get some trophies, and you always try every day to get up and come in and try to convey that message to your teammates. I think it's going to be a nice season. We have many competitions to play in, and we hope that it happens. It's a nice. Oh, he was also asked about people considering him to be one of the best defenders in the world. He said, it's a nice thing that many people consider you one of the best, but it's always something that pushes you to keep improving, to keep growing. There are too many defenders and too many players to say that I'm the best. Absolutely no one is the best apart from Leo Messi, who's the best footballer I've ever seen with my eyes, and the rest, I think, have to work a lot. To be considered one of the best defenders, like I said, is something that drives you day after day after day to continue improving and continue to have the same ambition. I think I'm on the right path. If they put me up there, it's because I'm doing things well, and I want to continue doing it the same way and see where my ceiling is, and that is my thought on a day-to-day basis. So, what I like about this squad right now, yes, there could be more done to it, absolutely, but what I do like about it is that it's a very young and talented squad, but it also has got a few experienced heads, specifically people like Sonny and Romero, who can really guide them. They're great examples for the other players to follow. And I think when they speak, both of those two players, the other players will listen. And, you know, Alan Hansen once said you can't win anything with kids, and that was swiftly proven wrong. I would imagine Spurs, very young but very gifted group with the likes of Romero, Son, and of course Postecoglou, who's been there and done it, and the new coaching staff, the whole coaching staff. They can absolutely are aiming to try and do something similar, win something with kids. And I said this before, but I just think a younger team creates a better connection with the fan base. You're kind of pulling for them more, and maybe people give them a little bit of leeway. You know, there's always scapegoats. I do feel like Spurs have got rid of a load of scapegoats, and then there's now some more ones that are being put in there as the ones to turn on quite quickly after anything. You know, I saw some people still moaning after a 4-0 win. So just enjoy it. Saturday, go and have a great Saturday night and enjoy it. I think sometimes we miss the pure essence of football, which is just to enjoy the good times. Is that our natural reaction now is to jump on social media and have a whinge about something. It's turned us into different people. I'm including myself in that as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of talent there in this squad, but there's also a few guiding people to take them along the way. And I do think we're going to identify with them really well, like the Poch side when it was young, and it will maybe just feel all the sweeter if Spurs win stuff with this kind of younger group. I still, of course, would like another experienced player. I would. We've got a week left of the window. We've got, well, it's not even a week now, is it? It's just kind of, it ends on Friday. So not a lot of time. I still think Spurs will look at opportunities that arise. I think the main focus is getting players out of the squad, the last remaining few. You've got Lascelles and Reguilon, and obviously this Manor Solomon deal has not gone through yet. Alfie Devine probably heading on loan as well. Might have a look at some other loans, we'll see. But I still feel like, even with the registration issues that I'm going to leave for now, we'll talk about once it all happens, because that's their problem, not mine. They can work it all out. I still feel that they'll just scour for some, if any of the players on their original list are available, or also anyone else that they had on their list that they thought would not be on the market suddenly comes on the market. And we'll see. I'll try and do another one of these videos if I can on Wednesday, so we have a little kind of middle of the week update. And hopefully a few bits and pieces will have moved on from there, and we'll also look towards the Newcastle game. But yeah, plenty to talk about. So yeah, I'm going to head off because it's very late at night, and you can probably hear from my voice and my eyes, I am struggling a little bit. It's been a long day, a fun weekend. It's always fun when Spurs win. It makes writing about them so much better. It makes talking about them so much better. And now it's time for them to kick on, use this momentum, and keep building on it, and hopefully give us a decent season to remember. And hopefully the rest of this window also gives us plenty to discuss as well. Right, I'm going to head off. as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.